The warning was already inside the wireless message, but London kept treating the message as real. That is what makes the Englandspiel so disturbing. The Germans did not begin by defeating an unbreakable British cipher. They captured a wireless operator, forced him to transmit, and then discovered that the more important weakness was not encryption. It was trust. A clandestine radio message had two jobs. Its cipher had to conceal what the agent was saying, but its security check had to answer a different question. Is this still the agent speaking freely? In the Netherlands in 1942, those two problems were treated too easily as if they were the same. SOE had been created in 1940 to support sabotage, subversion, and resistance inside occupied Europe. For that, mission wireless traffic was not office correspondence. It was the nervous system connecting London to people who could be arrested between one scheduled transmission and the next. Once that distinction collapsed, a message could be perfectly readable in London and still be completely false in operational terms. The words could decrypt correctly. The call sign could be right. The rhythm of traffic could look familiar. Yet the person at the key could have a German officer standing beside him. That made the most dangerous message, not the one London could not read, but the one it could read comfortably and therefore act upon. The Dutch case became one of SOE's worst disasters because the warning system did not fail silently. The signal changed. The expected check disappeared. Later, other clues accumulated. London still answered. That makes the episode unusually useful for understanding intelligence failure. The information needed to become suspicious was not hidden in a German archive. It was arriving on Britain's own circuits, and that is the real subject of the story. Not how Germany broke a British code, but how a British organization continued to trust a channel after the channel had begun telling it not to. Huub Lauwers had been sent into the occupied Netherlands as the wireless operator paired with saboteur Kees Taconis. They were parachuted into the country in November 1941 at a time when Britain was trying to build clandestine networks across occupied Europe. For a wireless operator, the radio was both lifeline and beacon. It connected a small, underground group to London, but every transmission also created a chance for German direction-finding teams to locate the set. The longer an operator stayed on the air, the more dangerous the room became. Lauwers established contact with Britain in January 1942. German counterintelligence was already hunting illegal transmitters, and the Netherlands offered little margin for error. It was densely populated, heavily controlled, and difficult terrain in which to hide a radio network for long. On the 6th March 1942, Lauwers was arrested in The Hague, near one of the locations from which he had been transmitting. The practical problem was immediate. A suitcase-sized clandestine set, aerial wire, Morse key, code material, and an operator on the air gave German direction-finding teams a signal they could hunt. German radio counterintelligence did not need to understand his politics. It needed to find the transmitter. Once Lauwers was in custody, the Germans now had something far more useful than a silent radio set. They had the operator who knew how the link was supposed to sound, the procedures surrounding it, and the expectations on the other end. Major Hermann Giskes of the Abwehr understood the opportunity. Alongside German security police under Joseph Schreider, he could try to turn a captured British channel into a controlled channel. But for that to work, London had to believe that Lauwers was still free. Lauwers therefore faced a strange problem. Refusing to transmit could expose him to harsher treatment, and 3 would close the only route by which he might warn Britain. Transmitting gave the Germans a weapon, but it also gave him one narrow chance to sabotage the deception from inside it. He could cooperate at the visible level while refusing to cooperate at the level London was supposed to verify. That was the whole reason the security procedure existed. Capture did not have to end communication immediately if the message itself could announce that the operator was no longer free. SOE had trained wireless operators for exactly this possibility. Lauwers did not need to send an obvious cry for help. He had a prearranged method of making a normal-looking message fail its own test of authenticity. The security check was simple in concept and powerful in principle. A field operator was expected to introduce a known irregularity into genuine traffic. Headquarters knew what that irregularity should be. If the operator was captured and forced to send, he could omit it. The absence itself would become the warning. In Lauwers' case, Dutch wartime records and later accounts describe his real check as a deliberate error in every 16th letter. That sounds almost trivial, which is why it is so useful. To a German guard looking over a Coded transmission, one intentionally corrupted character among groups of letters, could look like ordinary procedure. To London, the pattern was supposed to mean that the operator still controlled his own key. The Germans knew that SOE used security checks, partly because earlier captures had revealed the general idea, but they did not initially know Lauer's exact one. Lauer exploited that gap by misleading his captors about what London expected. He told the Germans, in effect, that his check involved using a particular word variation, often described as sending stip instead of stop. That gave his captors something visible to supervise. His real warning was elsewhere. He could omit the genuine pattern that London had been trained to look for. Within days of his arrest, he transmitted under German control. The message could still be enciphered with the right material. It could still carry the right identity. It could still arrive through the expected radio channel. But the authentication layer had changed. If London treated that layer as decisive, the game should have stopped almost at once. If London treated it as one clue among many, the Germans only had to keep the rest of the message convincing enough to create doubt. That distinction matters. Encryption answers, can the enemy read this? Authentication answers, can I trust who sent this? A system can succeed at the first question and fail catastrophically at the second. Lauer appears to have assumed the missing check would be decisive. He later tried additional warnings, including manipulations that pointed toward the word caught. But the first and most important alarm was not a dramatic phrase. It was the disappearance of something that should have been there. In security terms, absence was the message. The operator's silence inside the pattern was supposed to carry more weight than the readable text around it. London did not respond, as if the channel had been lost. The most damaging mistake was not that somebody failed to notice a typo. Security checks were known to be imperfect in practice. Radio conditions were poor, operators made mistakes, Morse traffic could be corrupted. A field agent under stress might forget a convention. That ambiguity created room for dangerous interpretation. The rule, therefore, mattered only if headquarters treated a missing check as an operational stop sign. In the Dutch traffic, that discipline broke down. There is an especially revealing comparison from the same period. The Germans had earlier captured another operator, Willem van der Reyden, connected with British intelligence. They learned from him that security checks existed, but when they tried to exploit his radio line, without possessing the correct individual check, London did not simply validate the traffic. The attempt did not mature into the same kind of successful radio game. That contrast shows that the concept itself could work when the receiving side treated authentication as a hard boundary. Charles Blizzard, who headed SOE's Dutch section during the critical early period, accepted Lauer's traffic as genuine even after the expected check was absent. Later accounts differ over exactly how each warning was explained away, but the operational result is clear. The link remained active. Then the pattern repeated. Another captured Dutch wireless operator, Hendrik Jordan, also had a security check. A message sent in his name lacked it. Instead of treating that absence as proof that the circuit was compromised, London sent instructions that effectively told the supposed field operator to use the security procedure correctly. That was a devastating reversal. A safeguard designed to expose coercion was now being explained back across a channel that might already be controlled by the enemy. There was also an organizational complication. In the early phase, SOE depended on an MI6 radio control system for parts of its communications. Messages, operators, country sections, cipher staff, and security staff did not necessarily sit inside one clean chain of responsibility. A warning could be technically observed without becoming an operational decision. That is a classic intelligence hazard. Collection, interpretation, and action can belong to different desks. Each desk can perform its narrow task correctly while the organization as a whole reaches the wrong conclusion. This is where the story stops looking like a single missed signal and starts looking like a system failure. The danger was not only that one person made the wrong judgment. It was that no process forced the organization to prove that a suspicious circuit was safe before using it again. Every successful reply from London then strengthened the German deception. A message answered is more than a message received. It tells the other side that the channel has passed whatever tests headquarters is applying. Jiggers could learn from that. The German operation became a Funkspiel, a radio game in which captured sets and captured procedures were used to impersonate networks that London believed were still operating in the field. The Germans called the wider counterintelligence Operation Nordpol. The name Englandspiel captured the logic more vividly. Britain was being made to play against a board it could no longer see. At first, the Germans needed Lauers because a real operator carried habits that were difficult to imitate perfectly. Wireless operators had a personal sending style, a kind of rhythm at the key. A trained listener could notice spacing, speed, hesitation, and recurring habits. For a deception service, that meant a captured operator was not just a man who knew a cipher. He was part of the authentication service. But once the Germans understood more of the procedures, recovered code material, captured more agents, and controlled more sets, the game became easier to scale. Each arrest could produce another radio, another code source, another set of contacts, and another opportunity to ask London for something. A captured network did not merely disappear. It could be made to generate the next capture. The mechanism resembled a chain reaction. One trusted circuit arranged a contact. That contact exposed another agent. The new arrest yielded another set or another procedure. The additional circuit then made the apparent network look larger and more credible from London. That is the self-feeding mechanism that turned a local compromise into a national disaster. By 1943, German controllers were operating a large collection of radio links back to Britain. Hunter, contemporary and post-war accounts vary slightly in the exact count at specific dates, but some place the number at 17 links, with other accounts describing 18 channels by April 1943. The exact number matters less than what it represents. London was no longer talking to one questionable operator. It was increasingly receiving a whole environment of mutually reinforcing traffic. One compromised circuit could appear more believable because another compromised circuit seemed to confirm it. That is how deception becomes structural. The enemy does not need every message to be brilliant. He needs enough controlled channels to create consistency. The Germans could now help create the appearance of a functioning underground organization, acknowledge instructions, report activity, and prepare reception arrangements. They did not need to invent spectacular victories every week. Ordinary administrative traffic could be more persuasive. Confirmations, requests, corrections, reports about contacts, arrangements for the next moon period. Bureaucratic normality became camouflage. The more normal the traffic looked, the easier it became for routine procedure to overpower suspicion. And every time headquarters acted on that traffic, the radio game became physical. A clandestine message is only dangerous on paper until someone boards an aircraft. On the 27th March 1942, only weeks after Lauer's arrest, SOE agent Noel Bodson, codenamed Watercress, was 5 dropped near Calencote on arrangements connected to the compromised link and was captured almost immediately. That was an early demonstration of what the radio game could do: turn a few groups of more characters into a reception committee waiting in the dark. The mechanism then expanded. Drop zones, arrival times, personnel, and supplies could be discussed through channels London believed were friendly. German officers did not have to search blindly for every incoming agent. In many cases, they could know where to be because Britain had effectively told them. For an arriving agent, the scene could look reassuring at first: a reception party in the right field, signals that seemed expected, transport waiting nearby. The nightmare was that the reception party itself could be German-controlled. A radio mistake in London had become a physical trap hundreds of kilometers away. Later in 1942, the compromise reached plans for building a much larger Dutch resistance structure. Agents associated with the so-called Plan for Holland were captured, and German control of the radio network allowed the fiction of an expanding underground force to continue. Between September 1942 and May 1903, further SOE agents were sent into the Netherlands and captured as the game widened. One historical summary counts 27 additional agents in that period for the main plan, plus others on separate missions. The human cost is harder to compress into one number because different histories count participants in slightly different ways. NIID, the Dutch Institute for War, Holocaust, and Genocide Studies, summarizes the Englandspiel as leading to the arrest of 59 agents, 54 of whom died in captivity. Those figures are not just the end of the story. They are the consequence of a communication failure that kept reproducing itself. Each aircraft, container, and agent sent after the warning signs appeared represented another decision made on the assumption that the radio picture was real. Containers could carry weapons, explosives, radios, money, and other material intended for resistance groups. When a controlled circuit confirmed a safe reception, the logistical system behind SOE could respond as though it were strengthening a network. In reality, some of that effort strengthened the German picture of British intentions and supplied the deception with fresh evidence that London still believed it. The Germans were not simply intercepting British operations, they were helping to schedule them. By the time the deception was finally collapsing, the question was no longer whether one wireless operator had been captured. The question was how an intelligence system had allowed an untrusted channel to become infrastructure. That is why the Englandspiel still attracts arguments about what Britain knew and when it knew it. Some post-war writers have suggested that British authorities knowingly allowed the game to continue as part of a wider deception strategy. The suspicion survives because warnings existed. Escaped agents later brought evidence, and Leo Marx wrote after the war about his concern over Dutch traffic that seemed unnaturally clean. But suspicion is not proof. Official inquiries and major historical studies have generally treated the Englandspiel as a German counterintelligence success amplified by British errors, weak procedures, fragmented responsibility, and failures of judgment. No conclusive evidence has established that SOE deliberately sacrificed the Dutch agents as part of a planned deception. The documented failure is severe enough. Lauer's warning only had value if the organization receiving it had decided in advance what the warning would force it to do. A security signal without a mandatory response is closer to advice than to a safeguard. The Netherlands exposed the gap between possessing a warning and believing it. Once headquarters allowed a missing check to be reinterpreted as error, nerves, or bad procedure, every normal-looking reply from the compromised network made the next doubt easier to dismiss. Code breaking gets the glamour because it reveals what the enemy is saying. Authentication asks the quieter question: does this signal still belong to the person we think it does? The Englandspiel shows which question can be more important. SOE did not need to lose every cipher for Germany to control the picture. Captured radios, captured people, and captured procedures were enough once. 6 London continued to trust them. The warning was inside the traffic. What failed was the decision around it. And that leads directly to the next case. SOE's disaster came from missing a warning. The next breakthrough came because the enemy created one by accident. In 1901, a German radio operator reused a Lorenz setting. It was a huge mistake.